And so I wanted to talk first about discovery. And I'll just kind of give my treatise, and then I'll throw it off, Randy or Jessie, whoever wants to interject. Obviously, Stamets and Kulber, big deal in Star Trek, right? First explicitly queer couple where they name it and there's no like allegory or metaphor or like plot trickery to try to convince people that it's not actually gay, even though it is. Like just folks existing as queer, being queer, and naming it, which is rad, right? There are a couple of criticisms that I have heard that I agree with about this. Namely being that like a gay guy couple was the safest choice, which is true, but I don't think that's like, we can't dismiss that, right? Because
we can't.
No, like, those folks matter too. For me, the criticism that for me really has the most resonance.
Are we going to come back to that point? Because that, I don't agree with that at all. Okay.
I think that's a full topic in and of itself.
We can do all of it. And then the criticism that I really have, that I have the strongest feelings about, is the fact that their entire relationship on screen thus far is informed by a hugely traumatic event, and it feels like it plays very much into the kill your gays trope. Even though I love both of the characters, I love both of the actors, and I love like the fact that they exist as characters. But I have some feelings about that. And then we have Tig Notaro, her character name is escaping me at the moment.
Jet Reno.
Yes. Jet Reno, yeah. The first thing we learn about her is that her wife's dead.
Right?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, so. And I did love how nonchalantly she just said my wife, but also I did not love how nonchalantly she said is dead. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So thoughts. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
Either way.
Well, I think I guess the first one to sort of jump off of, and feel free to cut me off at any point, would be the one of like, oh, the gay was the safest choice. And on one hand, there's an element of like, I get that in the sense that like there is an issue politically when we talk about these things where, straight, cis, generally white men are often the first to like get accepted by society, quote unquote. And then that sort of allows that group of people to, sometimes forget other elements of the LGBTQ umbrella. And you see that most like clearly, like probably the egregious examples like log cabin Republicans who just like, yeah, we're good for the most part, so we can forget the rest of the queer community. So I understand that point of view is like, oh, it's the safe choice because they're the most accepted by society. But I agree with I think what Randy is probably reacting to as well, is it's like, you can't just say like, oh yeah, well they're the most accepted, so we, they're not good enough, they're not deep enough into the queer community to be like acceptable and an accepted part of the queer community. So on one hand, like I'm sure in the writer's room there was a degree of that sort of talk, like from producers on high. But also it's important to remember too that the creators of Discovery, Brian Fuller, he is a gay man. Like he left the show at some point, but I'm sure he was also writing and created these characters from a place of like, look, I want to share my identity, an identity that I didn't get to express in any of the other Star Trek shows that I wrote on, because he wrote on, I think, Voyager and I think on Next Gen, but I might be wrong on that. So it's important to recognize that like those characters are also representative of a guy who had been in Star Trek for so long and couldn't write about his identity. So there's also a bit of like of beauty and finally letting someone get to share a piece of themselves that had been so a part of this franchise for so long.
Yeah. Randy?
Yeah, I mean, so my thoughts about how like that's the safest choice, I don't even know that that's necessarily true. At least if you're trying to like fly under the radar for who you want to watch the show as a broader audience. Honestly, I think that the like people who are least accepting of queer people would rather see like a lesbian couple, like two pretty women hanging all over each other. Like I don't even think that like two gay men is the safest choice necessarily. Like I get it from that standpoint, but I feel like if you just had like two hot women rubbing on each other, a lot of people are like, all right, I'm fine with it. And that's not okay also, but I don't think they went necessarily for the safest choice, quote unquote. Obviously, I think that like gay men are like a step down, like the next safest choice after that for, you know, audience as it were. But I don't necessarily think it's the totally safest choice. So maybe we can give them like half a point for that rather than like going full, like, you know, two hot lesbians. So I don't know.
Well, and I do think it's important to name that they're a biracial couple, right?
Yeah, I was literally about to.
That's true too. Yeah.
Yeah. And
which is both good and bad and how everything played out.
Also true.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, look what we can do with one stone. No. And then Backlash. Star Trek magic transporter, woo, not dead. Like
yeah.
Oh.
I mean, I guess we should we should probably talk about that too, the bury your gays part of it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, what I was going to say is I think the idea that, you know, having two gay men as the safest choice, I think that critique is a little too surface level because we can see that, like, there are elements of truth in that, but also like gay men are also part of the community and representation for them matters as well. I think what that is really a deeper critique of is the fact that like we've only gotten one thus far. You can never give an accurate representation of the community if you only have one view of it, right?
Right, that's very true.
And then they have to stand whenever you have that sort of system set up, like they have to represent everybody. And what's been interesting about the show is like both Wilson Cruz and Anthony Rapp, the actors playing the characters, like kind of understand that to a degree too. And I think they're very understanding. Like I had the luck, I was working at the Advocate magazine at the time that the first season of Discovery was going up, and I got a chance to interview Wilson Cruz, and he spoke about this idea is like he understands the responsibility that he has to have on his shoulders, and both like his honor to do that and also like how in a way it's unfair to him as well, in the sense that like he is honored to be like, look, I get to be something, I get to be this identity in a show that has meant so much to so many people expressly because it's about diversity. And so I get to be the first step in showing the community that I'm a part of and that I love, but then also just the unfairness of all of that, and the unfairness of like, you have to be everything for so many people, and there's no way that you can be. You're going to fall short for some people in many different ways, and it just it's a place that so many characters, not just in Star Trek, so many characters and actors and people get into in pop culture, where it's like, yeah, we're gonna have our trans character now, and they're gonna represent everything about the trans community, when ignoring the fact that the trans community is just as diverse as any other community or the entire population of the world.
Yeah, very true, very true. And I do love that Wilson and Anthony are very much aware of what they are carrying. They're not nonchalant about it at all. They're very aware of what they have to do and what they are doing and what they're able to do and what they're giving and all of the things. So that does help as well, having them be so aware of it. For anyone who follows them on Twitter or wherever, they're constantly like fighting the fight, and it's great and wonderful. So
yeah. And also, I mean, even that being said, like, I still cried my eyes out at the toothbrushing scene.
The toothbrushing.
Oh, yeah.
I know, the infamous toothbrush scene. Yeah. I mean, like, and how, I mean, I think about it, and it's like, how sad is it that we get that excited about seeing two people just loving each other on screen for 10 seconds with like no words? Like, why, like, for anyone who doesn't understand, like, if you saw those 10 seconds and didn't cry, then you're, you know, great, good for you. But imagine what it feels like to like go, you know, your entire life, and like something as simple and ridiculous as that, like, just makes you break down. So that's where we are.
It is such a beautiful scene, like, to just see them existing in a calm, quiet moment between two people. It's just, you don't ever see that with queer representation, like, right. So again, it's like going back to the idea, like, have to be everything for everybody, so it's like they're always standing in for something bigger, and are very, I don't want to say are rarely characters, but they are characters plus something else. And these two, at least at the start, felt like they were just characters and just got to exist as characters. And were celebrated outside of the show for being gay, but within the show they were just there, which I thought was
yeah. And that's that's the goal at the end of everything, right? Is to have it not be a thing. And until it's not a thing, we have to make it a thing. So that's the big argument. Why do we have to talk about it? Well, we have to talk about it because people hate it. So until people just ignore it and it's just part of everyday life and there's not someone trying to kill you for it, we have to talk about it. So that's why it's a thing until it's not a thing.
And even that, like, I remember after that episode aired, I was online and like people were back like, why do they have to make such a big deal of that about them being gay? I'm like, they were brushing their teeth. Like, it's not like, hi, we're gay. Welcome.
Does this toothbrush look gay? Because it is. Like, there was
look at the phallic object, you know, it's...
I was just about to say. Anyone ever notice how bigly phallus-shaped a toothbrush is? So, did anyone else, like, legitimately have trouble breathing in the scene where Kulbir dies? When that happened, I was just like, ooh, this is really intense, and like something like wild's about to go down. And when it happened, I legitimately, like, I felt a tightness in my chest and like had trouble breathing for a minute. And it's like, it's not often that, I mean, I've definitely cried over TV shows and movies and stuff. Like, that's pretty normal for me. But to have that much of a like visceral physical reaction, I feel like that's one of the first times that's like any media has ever done that, because I've just so invested. And I mean, that's literally the bury your gays trope, right?
Yeah. Well, it was so, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. Go for it.
Well, it was just like that scene is just so hard to watch because he feels, even within the scene, so disposable. He's just, it's just a quick, he like snaps his neck and it's just done for shock value. It's like, oh, look, this twist is happening. And while it does, you know, set up an interesting arc for Stamets and then Kulbir going into season 2 that I think was, you know, it's clearly obviously retroactive that they kind of placed on there, and we could talk about the issues of their relationship being defined by trauma, but like within that scene, it just makes him feel, I can't say any better word for it than he just feels disposable, and that feels so gross and disgusting by, like I was saying earlier, how much this show was trying to celebrate these characters outside of the show. Like, hey, look, like, you know, again, like, sorry to, you know, promote the Advocate, which I don't even work at anymore, but like we had them on our cover of our magazine and we did interviews with them and all this stuff. And then the first thing that happens in the first season is he gets just killed. And in such a blunt way, it just felt,
yeah.
It was just
thought about that because they definitely did play that up a lot in the
Say,
yeah,
hey, look, we're
I
being
hate like having it when they feel like they get to have it both ways, right? It's like, oh, look, we're so progressive and important. We have gay people. Snap. Like, I don't. Yeah. That feels like having it both ways. Yeah.
And this is not something that I can fully speak to, as I identify as, you know, I am white. But you know, to kill off the person of color half of a gay couple too is just even more egregious. Because that just speaks into those tropes as well and that sort of stuff. But like I said, that's not something that I can speak to as well than other communities could.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well,
it just gives you an icky feeling.
Yeah.
We wish they hadn't done it. But then, of course, then we have the bring back, which definitely, at least to, like, I don't have any inside knowledge about that particular part of it, but it definitely felt like we gotta fix it, rather than, we definitely planned this super convoluted, weird, not science way to like extract him from anyway. Like, it definitely felt like an afterthought the way that they brought him back, not like they were planning that the whole time. I feel like, I mean, I haven't rewatched the whole series beginning to end again to go back through it, but I feel like if that were something they were planning from the beginning, they would have like left little like breadcrumbs along the way for us to think, oh, maybe you can extract someone from a pod, and then like, but that was never anywhere to be found that I saw. But please correct me if I'm wrong, anyone out there. there.
Well, the only thing I'm aware of is that like Wilson Cruz, like right after that episode, tweeted like "I'll be back" and hinted at that, but we don't know if he was referring necessarily to. He does appear later in the season as like a weird mice like fungus dream. So it might have just been referring to that, but it also might have been predetermined that he was coming back in season 2. There's no as far as I'm aware, there's no official information.
Well, by then they would have known, right? Because it was already shot, but airing. So when he died, they would have already known that his character was picking up and people actually liked him and cared about him. So at that point, they might have told him, look, we're going to bring you back. We're going to find some idiotic way. I mean, I don't know. I'm just speculating, obviously.
Yeah.
But he would have known by that. Like they would have time at least to tell him, we're going to bring you back. We know we killed you, like whatever. So they would still have had the time to quote unquote fix it then, I think.
I can't wait for like 10, 15 years from now when the like behind the scenes book of Discovery comes out and we get to like learn all this stuff.
Know what the hell is going on. Yeah.
Yeah. So much to find out about that.
Yeah. I don't know. Because I'm trying to think of like, I don't know a ton about TV production and like the timeline and stuff like that. Because I do remember they, there was that episode of After Trek where people were like really mad and the producers were talking about like, oh, like that's not the last we're going to see of them or whatever. I don't know. But also like, I feel like to act like they didn't know how attached to that character people were going to get, I feel like is either like they would, if they were insinuating that was why they may have felt like it was an okay thing to do. I feel like that's either being really dishonest or that they really, really like miscalculated how much the audience was like automatically going to latch on to this queer character because, we talked about earlier about how like desperate all of us have been to get explicit queerness into Star Trek. And now that we have it, like, I feel like they would have to be so bad for the fans not to automatically latch onto that character. Like it would have to, like the bar is so low. I feel like there's just no way they wouldn't have known.
Well, they had to have known because that's why they would kill him off in the first place. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Randy.
Yeah. No, you're fine. Yeah.
I mean, the whole point of killing off a character that way is because they know we would care about him. It's like, oh, you killed a character I really loved, and that's really hurtful. And so yeah, like they had to have known because that's the whole point of having killed him in the first place.